Hello everybody and welcome back to World of Warships Legends. My name is Spartan Elite 43 and tonight we are back with a video that I haven't done in a long time. You guys that have been around a while may remember I did a video on the Tech Tree Tier 7 Battleships, a tier list. And so it's been a thing that's been requested multiple times. And I've always thought about doing it again, and I haven't. So we're going to do another tier list, this time with all Tier 8 battleships currently in the game. So, for those of you who are excited, for my opinion, remember that these are my opinions on what ships that I prefer at Tier 8. Okay? If I had to play any ships at Tier 8, what ships would I play? Okay, in terms of battleships, what I feel the best, what the most fun, and so on and so forth. All right. So with all of that being said, I have our battleships already put in here. We're ready to go. Let's start with the Alsace. Now I apologize ahead of time for anybody that has any idea how to pronounce some of these, because I'm gonna butcher some of them. All right, so just a warning, I'm a dum-dum, okay? Now, with all of that being said, we are going to start with the Alsace, or Alsace, however you want to pronounce it. How do I rank this tier list? Okay, this is going to be my tier list, my opinions based on when I'm playing the ship, my play style, and how I do in the ships, okay? That's basically how I'm going to rank it. So my average in terms of how I play the ships and how good I perceive these ships to be. Okay? So keep that in mind. All right, so the Alsace. Honestly, the Alsace is a forgettable ship. It's really not something that I play ever because of one ship in particular that just outshines it in pretty much every aspect and is actually my favorite ship. So we will get to that at some point. But Alsace, I'm going to say it's not the worst at the tier, and it's nowhere near the upper end of the scale. So I think it's a solid C. I think it's got to be a C tier. So Alsace, C tier. And now, off to the Friedrich der Grosse. Now this one is a more interesting choice because Friedrich der Grosse, as you guys know, it's a mini GK. Like, it really is. Which means it has some benefits. Like, it has the really good bow of the GK, which means it doesn't get overmatched as easily by the Yama. There is a small area there, but for the most part, you can get away with rushing Musashis and Yamas without taking the huge hits through the bow that other ships have to deal with when they try to rush a Yama or a Musashi. But, that being said, it's still a German battleship. It's nowhere near the gun performance of the GK. The GK's guns are the one redeeming feature of that ship. I love the GK's guns. These guns are not as accurate as the GK's. It also is not as damage resilient or resistant as the GK. But it has all the same weaknesses and then some. This ship, I haven't played in a while because it takes citadels. I know, crazy. I know you think, well, all these guys take citadels. But yeah, but this is a German battleship that takes citadels. That's a problem. Because, generally speaking, you play a German battleship solely to be more aggressive. And if you're giving up citadels because you over-angle, and this thing will get absolutely yeeted if it over-angles, it's just not as much fun. That being said, it is still probably going to be out there in terms of it's forgettable, but it's not. And I think the reason it's not forgettable is because of just how annoyingly bad it can be at times. So in that case, I guess this is our first D-Class, and I guess that's probably coming as to no surprise. Again, I know that these ships can all shine in their own ways, and I know that there are certain situations that they do better in, and so on and so forth. And for you, this ship may be higher up the tier list, but for me, I think it's got to be in the bottom of the tier. Okay? Now, Iwami. Iwami is the standout for the Japanese battleships. Izumo, we'll talk about Izumo in a minute. Iwami is fantastic. It has really, really nasty accuracy. It has good penetration. It seems like it's got better pin angles than most of the Japanese battleships with the same guns. And then it has those torpedoes for the bailout. And they're not just like suicide torpedoes. These torpedoes reach out and touch people. So for that, I think, in my opinion, at tier 8, Iwami has to go as an A tier. Has to. It's too good not to be. So A tier. It's not the best, but it's knocking on the door. It will knock your socks off if you give it a chance. So Iwami, definitely A tier. Okay? And that leads us to the Izumo. And we just talked about this. I hate the Izumo. I can't stand the ship. I think it's a steaming hot pile of cow dung, and I just cannot stand the Izumo. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that because that's a hot take, but personally, I think the Izumo has all of the weaknesses of every other Yami hull and no strengths at all. Those guns are so incredibly inaccurate or inconsistent for me that it has no redeeming features. Yes, it has armor of the Yama, so you can, in fact, tank potentially a lot of damage, but it also has the weakness of the Yama, and everybody by this point knows what that weakness is and can exploit it with taking minimal damage because the guns are so incredibly annoying. So for me, Izumo joins the Friedrich der Grosse at the bottom tier. Like, just straight up. Cannot stand the Izumo at all. Literally play any other ship. I would play the Friedrich der Grosse over the Izumo. Cannot stand Izumo at all. It is literally bottom tier. All right. And that leads us to some of the more fun ships. Now, we got a lot of ships left. But we're going to talk about the Maine. I know, we're skipping Lepanto. I know that you guys probably thought I was just going to go in order, but we're not. We're actually going to skip around a little bit because I want to save some of the better ships for later, right? I want to save some of the other ones that we're going to talk more about for later. Maine. Maine can be incredibly good. It has a lot of firepower. Don't be doing that now. Good Lord. I apologize. My remote for my TV just fell off onto the floor and it shattered into a gajillion pieces, so yay. With that bombshell out the way, back to the Maine. So the Maine can be very good, but it's less consistent than the Montana is. It has all of the weakness of the Montana, and then also does not have the incredible saving grace that is the Montana's belt armor. It also doesn't have as many guns. I know it's not a huge difference in guns, but still. Maine is probably what I would call a B tier. Like, this is a solid B tier, okay? This is right at middle of the pack. It's not terrible. It's not great. It'll make you have some good games on occasion, but it's not gonna be the one that you just reach out and you grab every time you go into tier 8. It's just not. So it's not quite as much fun as the Iwami. It's not, or some of the others, but it's not terrible. It's not falling off towards the bottom of the tier. It's a decidedly middle of the road ship. Okay? And that's what B tier is, right? It's right in the middle. It's like, okay, I don't love it, don't hate it, it exists, it's a thing, I play it occasionally, and that's a thing. It's fine. And then, let's go ahead and talk about the Marco Polo. Marco Polo, I want to love it. I really do. I want to. It has some ambush tactics that are just absolutely juicy that you love to see. But then you pull the trigger and you just watch sadness. And it's like every bit of everything that I hate about the Italian battleships comes through in an instant. So for me, Marco Polo has to be a C tier. I don't hate it. I would take it out into battle and have an okay time. Occasionally. But every time I pull the trigger and I see that god-awful dispersion, And we do know that it can be god awful. Despite having a like an accuracy build on it, it's still an Italian battleship. I want to love it, but I don't. And it's not middle of the road. So I think it's got to be a C for me, personally. So we're going to put it right here, C tier. Above the Alsace, but C tier nonetheless. All right. Pomeran. Let's go with the Pomeran. Y'all thought I was going to go to Marlborough. Nope. Pomeran. Pomeran, again, I know y'all going to think that I'm just picking on the Germans, but I promise it's not the case. I hate the Pomeran. The Pomeran is the embodiment of everything that is absolutely wrong with German battleships. It has the 15-inch guns that just seem to never... they are accurate. I'll give them that. They're more accurate. This is kind of like the buffed Bismarck, but it has absolutely awful pin angles and just never seems to give you the hits that you need when you need it. It does have torpedoes, but unfortunately, it's got all of the weakness of the German battleships as well, so using those torpedoes effectively at higher tiers, tier 8s and legendary tiers, most of the time, you're going to lose the torps before they ever get to be used, because they're right on the center of the ship, so they're in the perfect place that when you're getting spammed by Worcesters and Minos and every other light cruiser in the game, or God forbid a Conqueror or Temeraire hits you with HE, or Marlborough hits you with HE, I mean, you just lose those torpedoes, so they never really get to be used. So for me, Pomeran is a D tier. Like, I just can't stand the ship. And I made that perfectly clear when I did the review on it, when I did the Meet the Pomeran. I cannot stand that ship. It is a floating, just, I don't know. Don't like it. And as a matter of fact, I would put it below the Friedrich der Grosse. Izumo, I still think is worse. I hate that ship. But Pomeran is right there knocking on the door with Izumo. They're sharing a bunk. Okay? They're sharing a bunk. Sharing a rack. Now, everything that's left here are contenders. They're all good. There's really not bad ships among these. So, with that being said, I think we have to go with Lepanto. Lepanto is the one Italian battleship that I actually enjoy taking into battle. I know it's crazy. I don't run a accuracy build on it because I don't expect it. I just figure I know what I'm gonna get out of the Italians. So fire the guns, hope that something hits. But this ship is all about those disgusting SAP secondaries. I personally think the secondaries on the Lepanto are busted. They are busted as crap. And if you think otherwise, we need to have a talk. You're not building the ship for a full secondary build, because I'm telling you, this ship as a full secondary build is busted. Like, really busted. But that being said, it can't be S tier because of the inconsistency of those main guns. And I think if you've got to put something at S tier, it's got to be a full package. Fun and devastation. You know what I'm saying? And while this ship has a lot going for it, those guns, the main guns and their inaccuracy, I know, it's built for secondaries. It's not meant to be a main gun thing. The secondaries are insane. But for me, the Lepanto has to be an A tier. And I'm putting it above the Iwami. Just because of just how disgusting those secondaries truly are. Alright, so we're starting to narrow down the field a little bit, folks. Which one should we choose next? And I think it's got to be the Temeraire. Now, I don't know if I still hold the damage record for the Temeraire. I'm assuming that it's probably been beat at some point. But the Temeraire is a mini Conqueror. It is literally the Conqueror at tier 8. Okay? It is devastating and has a ridiculous amount of heal ability if you can survive. Played correctly, this thing is disgusting. It has the same ridiculous AP, the same ridiculous HE, the same amount of survivability. Like, it's insanely good, but it has the exact same weaknesses of the Conqueror and with fewer hit points to boot. And for that, Temeraire, unfortunately, despite me having a ridiculous game in it on stream for everybody to see, I have to put the Temeraire right there with the Maine as a decidedly middle of the road ship. Now, if I had to choose between the Maine or the Temeraire, I'm taking the Maine. So Temeraire's got to be bottom of the B tier. Has to be. I would take Maine out every day over the Temeraire. It's just not. It's not a ship that I particularly enjoy taking into battle. It's just too squishy. It's too squishy, man. It's got the ability to get yeeted just like the Conqueror. It struggles to get multiple heals off if you're getting focused by light cruisers and that, especially the Minos or the Plymouths, and you know what I mean. So you gotta be careful about that. But that being said, we're making progress, folks. Now, we just talked about the Temeraire. Let's go with the other British phenom, the Marlborough. Now, you guys might know the Marlborough as the Yeet Fest, right? You see a broadside Marlborough, you know you about to be smiling and giggling like a little schoolgirl. We all do it. I don't care who's in it. If you're caught broadside in a Marlborough, it's going home, all right? Well, actually, in this case, it's not going home. But the guns, the amount of firepower, and the sheer ability to just put rounds down range, and it's just so much fun to angle the ship and be able to make people miserable in the ship. And for that, Marlborough gets the nod for me as being an enjoyable ship. Is it an A tier, though? I don't think so. I think, again, it's going to have to fit at B tier. But for me, I prefer the Marlborough over the Maine. So we're going to have to put the Marlborough right here above the Maine. Okay? So it's not quite good enough to be an A tier due to that amazing weakness. You know, if you get caught broadside or if you get caught over angled, bad things about to happen, right? But for the amount of firepower you get to send down range and just the ability to just like eat a sandwich while playing the game, like Marlborough is checking that box, and it'll make you giggle the whole time while you burn everybody to oblivion. Sometimes you just want to watch the world burn, and both of these are fully capable of doing that. Okay? Now, we'll really get into the heavy hitters at the tier. So next, I think we got to talk about the Sovetsky Soyuz. Sovetsky Soyuz, for me, I want to love the ship. I really did. I enjoy taking the Vladivostok and just brutalizing people up close and personal. There is just nothing better than getting the Vladivostok in a tanky position and just watching folks suffer trying to dislodge you. Like, it is so fun, man. There is just something. One of the few ships that I've actually dev-struck a Jean Bart from full health is the Vladivostok. So when the Sovetsky Soyuz come out, and it is essentially a more agile, faster Vladivostok, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna enjoy this ship, but I just haven't been able to get the ship to work the way that I want, and it just feels like I would rather be in the Vladivostok. It's not the Lenin, because Lenin's busted at the tier. We all know that. It's not the Lenin. And it's not quite as tanky as the Vladivostok, at least not in my experience. And that could just be the fact that it's up against so many heavy hitters at the tier. And then you copy on top of that the limited damage controls with the fact that you're up against the Worcesters and the ridiculous DPM HE cruisers out there that are just the bane of everybody's existence at the legendary tier, and not to mention Shimas and all the other things. Sovetsky Soyuz has to take a step back from that, and I think it deserves to be right in the middle as well. And for me, Sovetsky Soyuz would be the bottom of B tier for me at tier 8. So that leaves us with the four heaviest heaviest hitters. The four most fun ships, in my opinion, at tier 8. If you got to take a battleship at tier 8, most of the time, you're going to pick one of these four ships because they are the most fun tier 8 battleships, period. Right? So let's start with arguably the worst of the four, and that is going to have to be Minnesota for me. If we had to take one of these four ships, it's going to have to be one of these guys over top of Minnesota. Minnesota is a great ship, don't get me wrong. And that's the thing. All of these ships that are left are great. But one thing or another is going to drop these guys down. And so we will see who will be the king. But Minnesota, unfortunately, is not. Now, God help us if Vermont ever comes to the game, because I'm telling you, I will love that ship. It will be like the only thing I play. Vermont is disgusting on PC. Can't wait till it comes to Legends and absolutely destroys everything. I'm not joking. I'm not, but seriously. Minnesota, for me, as we talked about on stream the other day, it is capable of just absolutely destroying a lobby. Like, it can be devastating. Anytime you're throwing 12 American armor-piercing rounds, 16-inch armor-piercing rounds downrange, you have the ability to yeet everything. However, it's not really a step up from the Kansas. It's got a few more hit points, but what do you get for those hit points? Well, you get guns that are arguably just as accurate as the Kansas. Okay, fair enough. I would argue slightly less accurate, at least they seem to be slightly less accurate in my experience with the ship. So you get a little bit more hit points, but the armor of this thing gets just shredded, pinned from every goddamn angle. Doesn't seem like you can ever angle this ship enough to get bounces unless they are close range. Like at any sort of medium to long range, this thing just eats penetrations. And not just the superstructure, which we all know American battleships and German battleships have those giant superstructures, but not just the superstructure. This thing just eats penetrations from everywhere. And then you add on to that the Minnesota has a worse concealment rating than the Kansas, meaning you're spotted more often, and it's slower, meaning you can't move around as fast as a Kansas, which is just stupid in and of its own right. Like, the Kansas isn't exactly known for its blazing speed, but Minnesota's even slower. So for me, Minnesota cannot be S tier. So that leaves really two areas. Is it a B tier? No. Minnesota's too good to be a B tier. So that means it has to be an A tier. Which means, where do I put it on the A tier? We've got Lepanto there. We've got Iwami there. Is it bottom? Is it somewhere in between? Honestly, for me, I think I've got to put it above Lepanto. I just enjoy the ship more because of the consistency. I know the ship really well in terms of it plays very similar to ships that I really enjoy. So, of course, I'm going to put it above the Lepanto just because it's just more consistent. Like, it just is. You're going to have better games more often in the Minnesota than the Lepanto, usually. Unless, of course, everybody just, like, parks in front of you and lets you just chew them apart with those secondaries. But anyway, so that's the Minnesota. Moving on. We've got to talk about the Yamato's little sister, the Musashi. Musashi, obviously, I mean, this thing is disgusting. It's a Yami at tier 8. It's got all of the strength, all of the weakness of the Yama. The downside is it doesn't have AA. But let's be honest. Does the Yama's AA really do that much anyway? How'd that work out in real life? So, Musashi, I think, has to be a solid A tier. And honestly, I don't take the Musashi out as much as Minnesota, but the reason I don't take the Musashi out as much as Minnesota is for one reason and one reason alone. It's too easy. It is literally an easy button. Okay? Like, I prefer ships that are consistent and also, like, just, I don't know. I tend to be a bit more thinking. And Musashi and Yami, I mean, you don't have to think. You just aim at a ship, pull the trigger, and thousands of damage every single time. Like, it's stupid. So Musashi's definitely got to be top of A tier. It's not even a question. And that leaves the two standouts at A tier, or at tier 8. And that is the Republik and the Ruprecht. Both of these ships are insane for what they are. Personally, for me, Ruprecht is an S tier because it has so much going for it. It's got guns that are just nasty. They are accurate enough to be a problem. It's got stupid secondaries, and then it's got torpedoes. And it doesn't just have a couple of torpedoes. It has all the torpedoes. So if you lose one tube, you've got 3 more waiting for you. You've got 8 torps off either side of the ship that have longer range than most German battleships. And that catches a lot of people off guard. And they're the slow torps, which we all know I get caught by more than any other torpedoes. It's the slow ones, the ones that give you enough time to go, oh, maybe he didn't launch him, and then you get yeeted. That's the torps that catch me. So for that, Ruprecht is at S tier. And it's without a doubt. Like, it is an S tier ship. Yes, it's got some vulnerabilities, but honestly, it's also got an icebreaker valve that if you go up against a Yama or a Musashi, like most of the time they aim waterline, so you can bounce those auto bounce style. Most people don't know that if they shoot deck line, they overmatch. You do have a 25mm bow. So I think maybe it's 27mm bow. I made that mistake before. 27mm bow. So anything 16 inches and above does overmatch, which is a lot of ships at these higher tiers. But people just don't simply don't shoot deck line. They shoot belt all the time. And if you angle this ship well, you can do some nasty things. And then the whole time, the secondaries are just yeeting. Okay? This is the original secondary king in the game, in my eyes. Like, literally the original. This thing is disgusting. It's the first secondary battleship that has just absolutely dominated secondary-wise. Yes, we had the Massachusetts, which I always said was pretty good because of its accuracy, but those 5-inch shells just don't do the damage. And these things with the 150s go nuts. Like, nasty, right? So, Ruprecht, S tier, all day. And that leaves the République. And for me, you guys know this is my favorite tier 8 battleship. It isn't even close. It's an S tier. This thing has disgusting armor penetration. It has disgusting consistency. I tend to not want to run the reload time buff Megalomania when I run this ship, even though I know recently I kind of went back to using Megalomania a little bit because of the reload. But I promise you, if you build this thing for accuracy, what you end up with is railguns that will yeet things at range. Ask any Iwami or Musashi or any other thing, Montanas, Maines, it doesn't matter. Any other battleship, any other cruisers, these 17-inch high-velocity guns at range will absolutely annihilate. And that's not talking about getting up close and personal. This thing has the armor, if used properly, to be well. The one downside, obviously, with any French battleship at high tiers is the lack of turrets. You only have 2 turrets. One of them is in the front, one of them is at the back. So up close, you've got to be careful because people will actually target the turrets. Now, that being said, my experience in the République has not led to a lot of turrets being knocked out. It definitely not as much as what happens with, say, the Jean Bart. So, in my experience, these turrets tend to be okay, only having 2 of them, and they are disgusting. They are just disgusting. So for me, my most played Tier 8 battleship, without a doubt, is the République, and I have no idea why they brought it down to Tier 8 instead of leaving this as a legendary. I would have rather the Bourgogne been down here at Tier 8 and this been the legendary tier, because that's how I view this ship. Like, I have no trouble taking this ship into legendary tier and just having a good time. So there you go, guys. That is my Tier 8 battleship tier list. You guys will have to let me know what you agree with, what you disagree with, and I cannot wait to see your arguments in the chat. I know it's coming. I know it's coming. I can already see you guys typing away down in the comments, and I love it. So let me know exactly what you agree with, what you disagree with, and why you disagree with it. And if you like what I'm doing, punch the like button, leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and as always, I will see you in the next video.